Welcome to Generating and Troubleshooting Actions and Outlets. We will cover creating actions and outlets from storyboards, and then we will cover creating actions and outlets in code first, and then hooking them up in storyboards. And then we will look at a couple ways that we can actually check these connections to make sure they are hooked up correctly. So let's begin creating some of these outlets and actions. We will first have to Alt-click on our Create Entry, and this will open up our storyboard to the left and our Create Entry View Controller subclass on the right. Next, we can control drag some of these elements into our code. So if we select our text field, we can control drag into our code, and notice that the connection type is an outlet. And then we have a blank name, and we will name this title text field. So now we have this IB outlet weak var title text field UI text field with the exclamation point. So that is now hooked up in code and in the storyboard. We can do the same for our save button and add tag button, but we will just do one for now. That way we can do the other in code. So let's start with our add tag button. So we can control drag our add tag over, and instead of having outlet as the connection, we can choose action. For the action, we will call this add tag. We can leave it at any, and the event type will be touch up inside. So if the user touches on their screen and then moves their finger up and then off the screen and is no longer inside this rectangle of add a tag, then this will not be fired. They have to tap inside of add a tag and then release inside of add a tag. We can hit connect, and notice in code it has our IB action func add tag with the sender, and that's just saying that this button sent information. So we will have access to the sender, and even though it's any, we can cast that as a UI button and have access to, say, any kind of property information in that UI button. But we're not going to need anything in there, so we will delete the contents there. So let's take a look at how we can hook up some of these inside of code. So we will want to hook up our body text view. So let's select our create entry and hit Command Enter to get rid of our storyboard, to give us some more space to see what we were doing. And we can say IB outlet weak var body text view, which is a UI text view. And then we have an outlet for our add tag button, because we are going to want to access the title of that tag, and we can't do that from the action. We need to do that from the outlet. So the outlet gives us access to the properties, and that action gives us access to be able to execute some kind of action when the button is tapped. So this is going to be UI button. And we're not going to worry about the color views yet. The color views will actually be that collection type that we saw when we were dragging over, but we will worry about that at a later time. To be able to do an action, we just do IB action, and this one will be our save function. So now, in order to hook these up, we have to go to our Create Entry storyboard. We can select our view controller, Create Entry, and right-click on that. And notice that this title text field is hooked up to something. So that's one way to be able to determine if our outlets and our actions are hooked up. We can also see that this add tag action is hooked up. But notice we get this little warning here. And that's because we deleted the parameter list. So we will actually want to exit out of this and re-hook that up to the add tag. So that's one way to troubleshoot our connection issues with our IB outlets and IB actions. So again, this will be touch up inside, and we will do the same for the save button. Just drag it on over and do touch up inside. So if we exit that, we can actually go over to this little connection inspector, which looks like a little right arrow, and we can see all of the connections again. We can drag this over to the add tag button. This is now an outlet instead of an action. Our body text. So now all of our outlets are hooked up. So what happens if we go to Create Entry and we delete this add tag button? Well, if we were to run the application right now, it would crash. And that's because if we go to Create Entry, select our view controller, that add tag button still has a referencing outlet, but that code does not exist. And you can see create entry does not have an outlet named add tag button, and it has this exclamation point there saying that, oh no, something's going wrong. So we have to remove that entry, and now our app will run again. But we didn't really want to remove that entry, so if we go back to our create entry UI view controller, we can hit Command Z, go back to our create entry, and we can drag this add tag back to the add tag button. So we have connections hooked up. Now let's actually do something with some of those connections. So let's go to our add tag function, and in this add tag we want to present an alert controller to the user, and with this alert controller we want to ask them to enter in a tag that they want to tag their entry with. So right now this present alert controller does not exist. We have to go ahead and create that present alert controller. So let's keep our code organized, and we will create an extension here at the bottom, and we will say extension of create entry, and here we will create that function that we created, present alert controller, and we will create our alert controller, and it's going to be a UI alert controller, and we want to use the initializer that takes in this title, message, and preferred style. So for the title we will just say tag. For the message, we can say add a tag. And for the preferred style, we will select alert. There's also this action sheet, and that will just display an action sheet at the bottom of the screen that gives you a couple buttons. But we want the alert to be presented modally right in front of the user in the center of the screen. So now we want to add a text field to the alert controller. And this asks for a configuration handler. And this configuration handler allows us to customize that text field. So it takes in a closure, and this closure gives us access to a text field property. And with that text field property, we have access to all of the properties on that text field. And the one that we care about right now is this placeholder. And inside the placeholder, we will say enter a tag you wish to add. So now we have an alert controller with a text field. We need a couple actions on this text field. We want a dismiss action or cancel, and a add action that will actually add this tag to our entry. So we will say let dismiss action equals a UI alert action, and we will use the initializer that has a title, style, and handler. For the title, we will say cancel. The style will be cancel, and the handler will be nil. Next, we want add tag action, and again, it will be a UI alert action that takes in a title, a style, so the title will be add, the style will be default. And this time we want to do something when someone taps this button. So we don't care about the action, so we will use a placeholder item of the underscore. And then inside of here, we want to check to see if the text field has a value. So to be able to get access to the text field, the alert controller has a text fields property on there, which is optional. And then we want to check for the first text field, and it should be the only text field since we only added one text field to the alert controller. If that doesn't exist, we want to return early, but if it does exist, we want to do something with that text field. And what we want to do is we want to check to make sure that text field is not empty. So we will say let tag equals text field dot text, and then we want to make sure the tag is not empty. So this exclamation point before the tag is just saying whatever this value is, make it the opposite of that value. So if tag.isEmpty is true, meaning that this text field had no text in there, then we get the opposite of that, which is false, and we were able to return early. But if it's true, then we can go down to our next line of text. We can say self.addButton or add tag button, and set the title to this new tag that was entered for the normal state. So with buttons, you can't just access the title property. You have to call this method setTitle to change the title of that UI button. We're not done though. We need to exit that closure, and we need to add these two actions to our controller with the add action. So we want to add the dismiss action, and we want to add the add tag action. And lastly, we want to present the actual alert controller. So we can say present alert controller animate it true, and we will do the completion with the last thing we want to do for now is implement the save button. So we can go to our save method here, and we want to check to make sure that there is text in our alert controller. So we can check to see if that title is empty, and do the same thing for body. We will say the body equals our body text view, and that it is not empty. Else we will return error. Next, we will set all the fields back to their default implementation. And we do this because when we add the entry, we want it to clear out so the user can quickly add another entry. So again, we have to use setTitle for the normal state. I want to go to our storyboard to double check what we set our body text view.text equal to. So we can go to the create storyboard, and we have it enter a body, and the title is placeholders enter a title, but once that's set to empty quotes, it will automatically get that placeholder. The text view, if you remember, does not have that placeholder, so we have to enter that enter a body. Next, we want to create a variable called tag and set that equal to nil. And then we want to check to see if the add tag button .title label .text is not equal to add a tag. Because if it's not equal to add a tag, it means the user actually added a tag. And if that's the case, we want the tag to be equal to the add tag button .title label .text. Otherwise, the tag will remain no, so that when we create the entry by calling the entry controller .shared .create entry, we can create it with the title that we unwrapped and we know is not empty, the body that we unwrapped and know is not empty, the tag, which may or may not be nil, and the color will just currently provide a default value of .light gray. And then we want to resign the responders. So when we tap on a text field or a text view, it brings up the keyboard for us to type in. But when we hit the save button, we want that to be dismissed. So we will resign responders. And this is a function that we will create. And this will just take our title text field and resign the first responder. And it will do the same thing for our body text view and resign first responder. In the final video of this section, we will take a look at inserting contents into a scroll view and how to handle that when a keyboard is displayed.